In the middle of the most important race of his life, Joseph Turner, the owner of a magnificent racehorse named Zeus, is thrown into panic when his horse suddenly bolts off the track, heading straight toward a mysterious girl. The crowd is left in confusion as Zeus, usually calm and composed, reacts with wild abandon. Joseph rushes toward the scene, fearing the worst. But then something even more bizarre happens. Zeus doesn't charge, but instead stops, lowering his head as if bowing to the girl. Why is this happening? What secret does this girl hold that makes Zeus react this way? What happens next will leave you in total disbelief. Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. Not now, Joseph muttered under his breath, pacing nervously along the edge of the racetrack. His anxious gaze darted toward Zeus, the magnificent black thoroughbred who carried not just Joseph's dreams, but almost all his money. Today was the big race, the one Joseph had staked everything on. Weeks of tireless training had turned Zeus into a nearly flawless competitor. The murmurs around the track confirmed what Joseph already knew. Zeus was the favorite, the one to watch. Joseph had spent days reassuring every bettor who would listen, promising them that Zeus would deliver. His outward demeanor was calm, his tone self-assured, but deep inside, the weight of his anxiety was almost unbearable. He stood among a group of bettors, attempting to project confidence. "Today we're going to witness greatness," he said with a forced smile, each word fighting against the rising tide of doubt in his chest. But then, from the corner of his eye, he caught something unusual. Zeus, typically calm and composed, began to pour the dirt frantically, shaking his head in an agitated rhythm. A cold wave of dread swept over Joseph. What's wrong, he wondered, his eyes locking onto the horse as he tried to decipher the cause of this erratic behavior. Zeus's ears twitched, his head turning sharply toward the entryway, as if he sensed something, or someone, approaching. Joseph followed the horse's gaze, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The stands were filling with spectators, buzzing with excitement for the race about to begin. Then chaos erupted. With a sharp, piercing neigh, Zeus reared onto his hind legs, drawing gasps and startled cries from the onlookers nearby. "Settle down, Zeus!" Joseph shouted, his voice tinged with both fear and desperation. He moved toward the horse, hands outstretched in a calming gesture. Stable hands rushed in to assist, but Zeus was too strong, his powerful frame straining against their grip. Whispers and murmurs rippled through the crowd. "This horse is out of control," someone muttered. But Joseph knew better. Zeus had always been gentle, so, attuned to him, it was almost as though the horse could understand every word he said. This was something new, something beyond Joseph's comprehension. Amid the pandemonium, Zeus's wild eyes focused on a figure moving near the fence. A young woman, no older than her early 20s, strolled casually, oblivious to the mounting tension. Her simple dress swayed as she walked, her dark curls tumbling loosely over her shoulders. She seemed out of place, moving with an air of tranquility that contrasted sharply with the rising chaos around her. Joseph's breath hitched as he spotted her, the world around him momentarily slowing. Zeus let out a snort, straining against the ropes until they snapped, sending stable hands stumbling backward. "No! Stop him!" Joseph yelled, but it was too late. Zeus vaulted over the fence, landing on the dirt track with a force that made the ground tremble. The crowd gasped in unison, frozen as the horse bolted straight for the woman. "Oh my God, he's going to trample her," Joseph thought, his heart hammering wildly. Yet the woman didn't flinch. She stood her ground, her serene expression unwavering as Zeus closed the distance. When the horse was mere feet away, he skidded to a sudden stop, nostrils flaring, and lowered his head as though bowing. The woman extended a hand toward Zeus's muzzle, her touch gentle, and the horse immediately stilled. The frenzy that had gripped him moments ago dissolved into a calm so profound it left Joseph and the onlookers stunned. "Who is she?" Joseph whispered, his mind reeling as he watched the scene unfold. He had never seen this woman before, yet Zeus's reaction was unmistakable, as if he had known her his whole life. "Hey, Joseph, what's going on here?" One of the exhausted stable hands panted, his face red from exertion. Joseph barely heard him, his focus locked on the mysterious girl who had somehow tamed the untamable. "I don't know," Joseph muttered. "But it sure looks like she has something to do with it," he replied, his eyes fixed on the young woman. She had just leapt onto Zeus' back with effortless grace. "Hey girl, get down from there," someone shouted from the stands, but she ignored them. With a slight nudge of her legs, she urged Zeus into a turn. Before anyone could react, they bolted toward the racetrack's exit. The crowd froze, their gazes locked on the sight of Zeus and the girl disappearing beyond the gates, leaving a swirling cloud of dust in their wake. Joseph stood there, rooted to the spot, staring at the lingering dust trail. Around him, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some laughed nervously, others whipped out their phones to record what had happened, while a few enraged bettors shouted demands for answers. None of it registered with Joseph. His mind focused on one thing. Zeus was gone, and he had no idea where. With trembling hands, Joseph pulled out his phone and dialed the police. "Good afternoon. I need help. My horse. My racehorse has been taken," he stammered, trying to sound composed, though his words spilled out in a rush. "No, it's not exactly theft." "Well, yes, they took him without permission, but I don't understand. Please, you need to find him." As he explained the situation in greater detail, Joseph felt like time had stopped. Every second without news of Zeus stretched endlessly, each moment heavy with anxiety. The operator's flat voice assured him that patrols would be dispatched and they'd try to track the horse, but nothing calmed him. How could he explain that Zeus hadn't just been taken, the horse had chosen to leave, and the girl, who was she? Searching for clarity, Joseph approached Jack, a longtime friend and stable hand. "Hey, did you see what happened?" he asked, hoping for a logical explanation. "I saw it all," Jack replied, scratching his head, his expression a mix of disbelief and concern. "Never seen Zeus act like that. It's like he was searching for someone, and that girl? She knew exactly what she was doing." Joseph could only nod, his growing desperation tightening in his chest. "Zeus doesn't behave like this, Jack. Something's going on, something I can't make sense of." Just then, a police officer approached him. "Mr. Joseph, we've had reports of a black horse with a young woman headed toward downtown. We're sending patrols to that area," the officer said in a measured tone, trying to reassure him. Joseph thanked the officer, but the news only deepened his unease. Zeus, running through city streets, a racehorse weaving through traffic? None of it made sense. Yet deep down, Joseph couldn't shake the feeling that Zeus's actions weren't random. The horse moved with a strange purpose, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. Minutes dragged by, each one feeling like an eternity. Joseph paced back and forth, clutching his phone, willing it to ring with good news. Finally, it buzzed. "Sir, we've received additional sightings. It seems the horse is headed out of the city toward rural areas," the officer reported over the line. Joseph's stomach dropped. Rural areas meant Zeus was moving farther away. But why out there? He murmured to himself. He wandered through the racetrack's parking lot, his steps heavy with desperation. Hours had passed without a solid lead on Zeus or the mysterious girl. He'd spoken to the police, questioned the stable workers, even chased down rumors from bettors in the stands. But there was nothing. The sun dipped low behind the mountains, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson. With each passing moment, Joseph's hope of finding Zeus dwindled. Out of nowhere, he felt a sharp tap on his shoulder. At first, Joseph thought he had accidentally bumped into someone due to his distraction. But when he turned his head, he saw a man of average height, wearing a worn-out baseball cap and a faded denim jacket. Before Joseph could say a word, the man leaned in slightly as if preparing to apologize. Instead, he slipped a small, crumpled piece of paper into Joseph's hand and muttered, "Read this, but not here." Joseph froze for a moment, his eyes narrowing in curiosity and suspicion. "Who are you?" he managed to ask. But the man had already turned away, weaving quickly through the parked cars until he disappeared into the dim light of the parking lot. Joseph looked down at the note in his hand, debating whether to open it or toss it aside. But his curiosity and his determination to find Zeus won out. Slowly, he unfolded the paper. The message was brief, written in rushed, uneven handwriting. Meet me behind the stables in 30 minutes. Don't bring the cops. Joseph's brow furrowed as he read and reread the cryptic message. Something about it felt off, but if this was his only chance to gather information, no matter how slim, he couldn't let it slip away. He tucked the note into the pocket of his jacket, glancing around to ensure no one had seen the exchange. Then, with cautious steps, he made his way toward the stables, leaving the chatter and bright lights of the crowd behind. The air grew cooler and quieter as Joseph approached the stables. The faint sounds of the city faded, replaced by the whisper of the wind kicking up small swirls of dust. He leaned against the weathered wooden wall, arms crossed, trying to appear calm while the minutes dragged by. Checking his watch, he realized the appointed time was drawing near when the sound of approaching footsteps reached his ears. Emerging from the shadows, the same man from earlier stepped into view. This time he removed his cap, greeting Joseph with a nonchalant nod. "You don't know how much trouble I'm risking just talking to you," the man said, pulling a cigarette from his pocket and lighting it. The smoke spiraled lazily into the air, mingling with the earthy smell of the stables. "But I can't stand seeing a good horse go missing." Joseph took a cautious step forward, his voice betraying his anxiety. "Who are you? What do you know about Zeus?" The man let out a low chuckle, taking a slow drag from his cigarette. "Call me Jack," he said. "What matters is that I saw the girl. She paid me to bring her to the racetrack this morning, no questions asked. But when I saw the chaos that followed, I knew there was more to the story." He exhaled a plume of smoke, his expression unreadable. "I know where she is now." A spark of hope flared in Joseph's chest, briefly pushing aside the fear and doubt that had plagued him. "Where? Tell me, I need to find Zeus," he pressed, stepping closer to Jack. Jack held up a hand, as if calming an impatient child. "Easy there, pal. I can't spill it all here. Too many eyes, too many ears. I don't need the cops sniffing around me, but I will say this. She didn't steal him. That horse went with her willingly. He recognized her." Joseph stood stunned, letting the weight of Jack's words sink in. Zeus had gone with her by choice. The idea made no sense to him. "That's impossible," he muttered to himself. "She had no right to take him." "Maybe not," Jack replied, stubbing out his cigarette against the heel of his boot. "But horses don't care about rights or rules the way people do. I don't know what history they share, but it's clear there's something. If you're serious about finding her, head out to the small ranch on the edge of town. It's off the old road that leads to the river. Hardly anyone goes there since the train tracks shut down. That's where I left her this morning." Joseph stared at Jack, searching his face for any sign of deceit, but the man's expression remained impassive. "Why are you telling me this?" "You could have just walked away and forgotten all about it," Joseph said, his voice edged with suspicion. "Because I like horses," Jack replied simply, shrugging as though his words were the most natural explanation in the world. "And because I believe that animal doesn't belong on a racetrack, he deserves to be with someone who truly loves him." Without another word, Jack turned and walked back into the shadows, leaving Joseph with more questions than answers. For a moment, Joseph stood frozen, processing the strange exchange. He finally had a lead, a clear direction, but Jack's cryptic words unsettled him. Something about the way Jack spoke of Zeus made Joseph question whether he truly knew his own horse. There was a past, a story tied to Zeus, that he hadn't uncovered. Something that might explain the connection he had noticed between the horse and the girl. After a pause, Joseph pulled out his phone. Instead of dialing 911 as he had done before, he called a police officer he trusted. When the officer answered, Joseph shared the address Jack had given him, but deliberately left out the details of their conversation. "Maybe we have a lead," Joseph said, doing his best to sound confident. "But we need to approach this carefully." "Understood, Joseph," the officer replied. "We'll follow your lead, but remember, safety first. If anything seems off, let us know immediately." Joseph hung up and took a deep breath. He felt like he was on the brink of uncovering something critical, but he also understood that one wrong move could complicate everything further. Driving along a narrow dirt road, Joseph's truck headlights barely pierced the rural darkness, illuminating the winding path and the occasional wooden fence post. The fields flanking the road stretched out into the night, interrupted only by the shadows of looming trees. His mind churned restlessly as he replayed the events leading to this moment. He remembered the first time he had seen Zeus, a spirited colt in a dusty stable. Though small, Zeus exuded an energy that seemed to say the world was his for the taking. Joseph had seen potential, not just in the horse, but in himself. Zeus wasn't just an investment. He was a reflection of Joseph's hopes and dreams. Never would he have imagined that owning Zeus would lead him here, chasing cryptic clues in the dead of night. But something in Emma's voice, in the way she had spoken about Zeus, told Joseph he needed the truth, no matter how unsettling it might be. At the end of the road, faint lights came into view, a house and a barn. Drawing closer, he spotted the silhouettes of police officers waiting by the entrance. They had arrived ahead of him, their postures alert yet steady. One of the officers approached his window. "We haven't gone in yet. Wanted to wait for you," he said, his tone serious but understanding. Joseph nodded, appreciating the gesture. "Let's see what we're dealing with," he replied, trying to sound assured, though a growing knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach. Whatever lay ahead felt like it could unravel everything he thought he knew. The group moved cautiously across the ranch yard, heading toward the barn that loomed in the distance. The silhouettes of several horses stood out against the night, their figures grazing or resting in peaceful oblivion to the tensions simmering around them. As they approached, each step seemed amplified in the stillness of the night. The rhythmic crunch of boots on dirt merged with the soft rustling of leaves, creating an almost eerie symphony. Suddenly, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Joseph stiffened, instantly recognizing her. Leslie stood there, a lantern in her hand, its warm glow casting shadows across her face. Her expression was a mix of resolve and sorrow, as though she had been waiting for this moment all along. "I knew you'd come," she said, her voice calm yet carrying an undeniable weight. Joseph stared intently at Leslie, unable to ignore how the soft glow of the barn's lamp cast elongated shadows across her face, making her eyes shine with a fiery intensity. "Leslie," he began, his voice faltering as he struggled to find the right words. "I need to understand what's going on here. I need to know why you took Zeus." Leslie lowered her gaze briefly, as if sorting through her thoughts, before lifting her head to meet his eyes directly. "I didn't take him, Joseph. He came with me because he wanted to," she said, her tone steady. "Because he remembered," she added, her words hanging in the air like a fragile thread binding the moment together. "This is his home. He was born here, raised here. Zeus isn't just a racehorse. He's my friend, my family." Joseph felt a wave of shock and confusion crash over him. What are you saying?" "I bought Zeus legally. I've taken care of him for years. He's more than just a horse to me too," he retorted, his voice hardening slightly, though a flicker of something, perhaps pain, twisted within him as he spoke. "I know," Leslie replied, taking a step closer, "and I didn't come here to steal him away from you. But when I saw him on the track today, when I saw the way he recognized me, I knew there was something I had to do. I don't know if you can understand this, Joseph, but he reminded me that some bonds can't be broken no matter how much time has passed." Her words left Joseph in stunned silence. For a moment, he studied the woman before him and saw something he hadn't noticed before: a profound connection, an undeniable love. It wasn't something that could be faked or bought. There was a raw authenticity in the way she spoke of Zeus, the way her eyes lit up at the mere mention of his name. This wasn't a thief he was confronting. It was someone who had shared a deep bond with the horse long before he'd entered the picture. "Where is Zeus now?" he asked finally, his voice softer, almost resigned, though a hint of fear lingered in the question. Emma smiled faintly, though the sadness in her expression was unmistakable. "He's in the stable, resting. He was tired after everything today, but he's fine. I didn't force him to do anything, Joseph. I just wanted to see him one last time. And he recognized me." Joseph felt the world slow around him. With a nod, he motioned for Emma to lead the way to the stable. The officers who had been watching from a distance followed discreetly, keeping their presence non-intrusive. When they reached the stable door, Joseph drew a deep breath before pushing it open. There was Zeus, resting peacefully in a corner, His ears relaxed, his head bowed low. At the sound of the door, he raised his head and looked toward them, letting out a soft snort as if greeting old friends. Joseph stepped forward slowly, the crunch of hay beneath his boots the only sound. He stopped just in front of Zeus, extending a trembling hand to stroke the horse's neck. "Hey, buddy," he murmured, feeling an inexplicable wave of relief wash over him. "Zeus was here, safe, unharmed. I missed you." His hand slid gently over Zeus's warm, glossy coat as he continued to stroke the horse. The simple act felt both comforting and bittersweet. For all the years he had cared for Zeus, it suddenly struck him how little he truly knew about the horse's past. It was as though he had been looking after a stranger without ever realizing it. Yet now, as his fingers traced the curve of Zeus's neck, he felt both closer to and more distant from the animal than ever before. Emma stood a few steps back, her face soft in the dim barn light. She seemed to hesitate, as if searching for the right moment to speak. Finally, drawing a deep breath, she stepped closer, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I know you love him, Joseph," she said gently. "I can see it. That's why I'm here talking to you instead of taking Zeus and leaving without a word. He's been well cared for. I can tell you've loved him. But when I saw him today, I knew he hadn't forgotten where he came from. And I haven't either." Joseph looked up, his hand still resting on Zeus's neck, his expression a mixture of curiosity and unease. "What are you trying to say, Emma?" he asked, though a part of him already knew the answer. He'd seen it earlier, the way Zeus had run toward her, without hesitation, without fear. Emma stood beside Joseph, her gaze fixed on Zeus, the horse that had been her constant companion in childhood. Her voice softened as she motioned broadly with her hand, as if trying to encompass the entire ranch. "This is his home," she said. "He was born here, took his first steps here. I was just a little girl, but I spent every day with him, feeding him, brushing him, talking to him. We were inseparable." She paused, her eyes glimmering with a sorrow she had kept hidden all night. "When my dad sold him, it felt like I lost a part of myself. But I understood why he did it. We needed the money." Joseph nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling over him. For the first time, he began to grasp the depth of what had happened. Life's hardships often force people into making decisions that left scars. He realized that Zeus wasn't just a horse to Emma. He was family, a living part of her history. "I didn't know," Joseph murmured, his voice subdued. "No one ever told me where Zeus came from. I thought I was just buying a good horse, nothing more. But now I see I was wrong." He lowered his eyes, his fingers brushing through Zeus's mane. "If I'd known, maybe I would have done things differently." Emma offered a faint smile, though a hint of melancholy lingered on her lips. "You couldn't have known," she said gently. "Even if you had, what's done is done." She leaned toward Zeus, her fingers tracing his muzzle, with a tenderness that made Joseph's chest tighten. "All I ever wanted was for him to be happy, and I know he's been happy with you. But deep down, I also know he's always longed to come back here." Silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken feelings and unresolved choices. Joseph felt caught in an emotional tug-of-war. Keeping Zeus meant staying on the path he had meticulously planned, racing, winning, chasing success. Letting him go, however, meant giving Zeus something money could never buy: the chance to return home, to find freedom. "If I let him stay here," Joseph finally said, the words slipping out before he could second-guess himself. Emma looked at him in surprise, her eyes wide. She hadn't expected this. "You'd really do that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "You'd leave him here?" Joseph hesitated, struggling to put his thoughts into words. "Letting Zeus go. It's more than just losing a horse for me. It's giving up part of what I've been building all these years. But after today, I can't ignore what I saw. He recognized you, Emma. He ran to you like he'd been waiting for you all this time." Emma nodded slowly, biting her lip to hold back tears. "I didn't think you'd say that, Joseph," she admitted. "But if that's how you feel, I promise he'll be safe here. He'll have everything he needs." "I know," Joseph said, with a faint smile, That couldn't quite mask the sadness in his eyes. I know he has a home here, but I can't decide this right now. Take the time you need, Emma replied, her tone steady but understanding. I'm not going anywhere, and neither is Zeus. She hesitated as if wanting to say more, but instead she simply stroked the horse's head one last time, before stepping back. Joseph stood still, watching her retreat. The distance between them seemed to fill with the weight of all the things left unsaid. The barn was quiet, save for the soft sounds of the horses shifting in their stalls, their breaths rhythmic and steady. The dim light from the lantern flickered, casting long, shifting shadows on the wooden walls, as if the night itself had been listening to their conversation. That night, Joseph returned to the modest motel where he was staying. He dropped onto the bed without bothering to turn on the light, his mind swirling with thoughts that refused to settle. He had come here with a clear goal, to find Zeus and bring him back to the racetrack, but things had become far more complicated than he had ever anticipated. Emma had shown him an honesty he hadn't expected, genuine love for Zeus that had disarmed him entirely. And now he was left with no easy answers, no firm decision in sight. The following morning, Joseph was up before dawn. He knew he couldn't afford to delay any longer. He needed to talk to Emma and confront the situation, but he wanted to be sure of what he would say. Leaving the motel, he stepped out into the crisp morning air, fragrant with the scent of damp earth and freshly cut grass. The day was clear, and the gentle hues of pink and orange spread across the sky as the sun began its slow ascent. There was a rare tranquility in that moment, as if the world was offering him a brief reprieve to collect his thoughts. When Joseph arrived at the ranch, Emma was already there, feeding the horses. She looked up as he approached, her lips curling into a faint smile, as though she sensed that something important was about to unfold. Joseph stopped a few feet from her, his expression serious but calm, and without much preamble, he began to speak. I've been thinking a lot about all of this, he said, his voice deliberate, each word carefully chosen. I know how much Zeus means to you, and I can't deny how much he means to me too. But I don't want us to keep clashing. I want to find a way to do what's right for both of us and for him. Emma regarded him with a mix of relief and unease. What are you saying, Joseph? She asked softly, her voice trembling slightly as if afraid of what his answer might be. Joseph drew a deep breath, bracing himself for what felt like stepping off a ledge. I'm taking Zeus back to the track, he said, watching her reaction closely. That's his job. It's what I've trained him for. And I know he can excel, but... He paused, ensuring she was listening. I want you to know that you'll always have a place in his life. You'll always be welcome to visit him, to spend time with him. I'm not going to take him away from you, Emma. That wouldn't be right. For a moment, Emma stood frozen, her face a mixture of emotions. Shock, sadness, maybe even a hint of relief. Finally, she nodded slowly, exhaling a deep sigh that seemed to release the weight of her worries. Thank you, Joseph, she said, her voice steady but filled with sincerity. I didn't know what to expect, but this is more than I could have hoped for. I just wanted to make sure Zeus was safe, that he was with someone who cared for him, and now I know he is. Joseph felt a portion of the tension in his chest ease. But there was still more he needed to say. What you did, he continued, his tone serious but not harsh, it was risky. Running off with Zeus like that, it could have led to serious trouble for you. But I'm not going to press charges or do anything like that. I understand why you did it. You did it out of love for him, and I can't fault you for that. Emma's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she held them back, offering a small, grateful smile instead. I didn't have a plan, she admitted, shaking her head slightly. I just needed to see him, and when he ran to me, I couldn't walk away. I know it was wrong, and I'm sorry for putting you in this position. It's done now, Joseph said, raising a hand to stop her apologies. But you've helped me see something I hadn't realized before. Zeus isn't just a racehorse. He's more than that. And he hesitated, the weight of his own realization settling in. I've been blind to it until now. They stayed there for a while, wrapped in a silence that no longer felt awkward, but rather like an unspoken understanding. It was as if the words they'd exchanged had built a bridge between two lives that had once run parallel, never intersecting until now. Emma moved closer to Zeus, gently stroking his head while whispering something that Joseph couldn't hear. Still, he could see its effect in the way Zeus's ears twitched, fully tuned to her voice. "I'll keep in touch with you," Joseph said at last, breaking the stillness. "I want you to know how Zeus is doing, and I want you to visit him anytime you want. I don't want him to feel like he's lost his home, even if he's far from here." Emma nodded, her eyes shimmering with more than just the tears she'd been holding back. "That would be best for him," she replied, and Joseph knew she wasn't only speaking about Zeus. "I don't want him to feel lost or confused again, and I know he'll be okay with you." There was a warmth in Emma's words that touched Joseph deeply. Her voice carried a sincerity so profound, it left no room for doubt. He realized she wasn't only speaking about Zeus, but also about herself, her own hopes and fears. At that moment, Joseph understood that the story unfolding between them wasn't just about a horse finding its way again. It was about two lives reconnecting in unexpected ways. That same afternoon, Joseph made a decision, simple yet meaningful. He would invite Emma to join him and Zeus on the journey back to the city. Until now, all their interactions had been fleeting, tense, and marked by the uncertainty of what lay ahead. This time, he wanted to be different. He wanted Emma to share the journey so that Zeus could feel both their presence, a living bridge between the two worlds they had known. When Joseph proposed the idea, Emma blinked, surprised, as if unsure whether she'd heard him right. "You want me to come with you?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "To the city?" "Yes," Joseph replied, his smile needing no further explanation. "I want you with us. I think it's best. For Zeus, for you, and for me. I don't want it to feel like he's leaving something behind." Emma didn't know what to say at first. She had prepared herself to say goodbye to Zeus, expecting him to return to the world of racing as if none of this had ever happened. This invitation was something she hadn't anticipated. As the idea settled in her mind, she felt a sense of relief filling her chest. "All right," she said, finally nodding. "I'll come." The ride back to the city was peaceful, punctuated by those quiet, intimate moments that make time feel special. Joseph drove the truck while Emma sat in the back with Zeus. She had insisted on staying close to him, stroking his head every so often, and whispering things only the two of them could understand. Zeus seemed calmer than ever, his ears constantly swiveling to catch Emma's voice. Occasionally, he turned his head to look at her with deep, dark eyes that radiated a tranquility Joseph hadn't seen in the horse for a long time. As the scenery shifted from open fields to increasingly crowded streets, Joseph found himself glancing in the rearview mirror. He watched Emma and Zeus together and couldn't help but feel part of something larger than he had imagined when this journey began. His thoughts drifted to the years he'd spent chasing success, focused on races, the pressure to win, and being on his own. Now it all seemed so far away. When they arrived in the city, Joseph made sure Emma felt welcome at the stable where Zeus would stay. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, comfortable, and run by people who knew Zeus well enough to understand his needs. Introducing Emma to the stable hands, Joseph made her role clear. "This is Emma," he said. "She's a friend, someone important to Zeus. Please treat her with the same respect you give me." And with that, the lines that had once separated their lives blurred even further, as if the bridge they had built was now strong enough to hold not just them, but all the weight of their shared hopes and unspoken promises. In the days that followed, Emma stayed close to Zeus, easing into life in the city without complaint. Yet Joseph could see traces of longing in her eyes, a quiet ache for the wide open fields of the ranch she'd left behind. Zeus, on the other hand, seemed revitalized. During their training sessions, Joseph noticed a newfound ease in the horse's stride. Gone was the tension that once gripped him before a race. Zeus still possessed the fierce spirit of a competitor, but now there was an unmistakable calm about him, as if he had discovered a balance that had eluded him before. A few days before the next race, Joseph found Emma in the stable, brushing Zeus's coat with gentle precision. "How do you think he's doing?" he asked, feigning seriousness, though a smile played at the corners of his lips. Emma looked up, her expression softening into a smile of her own. "Happy," she said without hesitation. "I see it in him, Joseph. He's happy. I think he knows he's not alone anymore." "I think so too," Joseph replied with a nod. After a moment of thoughtful silence, he added, "You know, it's made me realize I've been looking at all of this the wrong way for so long." He paused, organizing his thoughts. "I wanted Zeus to win, to be the best, but I never really considered what he needed to feel right, and now I see it wasn't just about training or the perfect track. He needed you, Emma." Joseph's words lingered in the air, and Emma felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in a long time. "I just want him to be okay wherever he is," she murmured, her voice almost a whisper. "And if being here with you is what makes him happy, then I'm happy too." Race day arrived with its usual mix of anticipation and tension. This time, Emma stood beside Joseph, watching as Zeus prepared. The electric energy of the event buzzed around them, but Zeus seemed untouched by it, standing steady and composed. When his turn came to take the track, Joseph and Emma watched as he trotted with effortless grace, his movements exuding confidence, as if for those fleeting moments the world truly belonged to him. And when the race began, Joseph knew he'd made the right decision. Zeus wasn't running alone anymore. He was surrounded by those who cared for him, and that gave him a strength no training could ever replicate. Zeus ran, and he ran well. But what Joseph and Emma would remember most wasn't the race itself. It was the way Zeus looked after crossing the finish line. He approached the fence where Emma waited, lowering his head so she could stroke him. In that moment, an unspoken bond passed between them, a quiet promise that no matter where life took them, they would always have each other. In the months that followed, subtle yet profound changes unfolded. Emma began visiting the stables more frequently, and Joseph found in her a partner who understood horses in a way he was only beginning to appreciate. Before long, they started discussing the possibility of a partnership, combining the ranch's resources with the racing world to create opportunities for more horses to find homes. It was a way to give other horses the same freedom Zeus had found. And so one chapter closed as another began. Joseph came to understand that true worth wasn't found in trophies or accolades, but in the care and love poured into every step of the journey. Emma reconnected with a part of her past she thought she'd lost, and Zeus. Zeus found a place where his old story and his new one could merge into something extraordinary. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Joseph, Emma, and Zeus stood together in an open field, far from the city's noise and bright lights. Zeus ran freely, his mane streaming in the wind, while Joseph and Emma watched from a distance, sharing a quiet smile. "Look at him go," Joseph said, his voice filled with a deep satisfaction. "It's like the whole world belongs to him." "It does," Emma replied, her voice full of pride, "because in the end it wasn't about where they were. It was about who they were with. And in that moment they knew that whatever the future held, there would always be a place for them. A place where hearts could run as free as Zeus, unafraid and unbound, with the wind as their only companion, and the promise of a tomorrow filled with new adventures. If this story has inspired you and touched your heart, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss another exciting and meaningful video. Our channel is dedicated to bringing you inspiring stories that help you discover the deeper values of life. Share this story to spread positive messages and reach more people. Make sure to turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest uploads. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.